From the old movies of 30 years ago and beyond,
to the world of the new films of the last 30 years.
To the movies that are now playing, this is Old, New, and Now Playing. And now, here's your host, Will Robinson Smith.
Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now, playing your time machine through the world of movies. I'm your host, Will Robinson Smith. Thank you so much for joining me. And you know, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about auteur filmmakers and rattled off a couple of them. Well, I actually didn't mention a guy who absolutely belongs in that list, and that is Wes Anderson. And with his upcoming film Isle of Dogs just on the horizon, coming out in limited release for some this weekend, wider release for others in April, I figured now would be a good time to take a look back at his first venture into the world of animation. And so with that, get your animatics ready. This is your feature presentation. Fantastic Mr. Fox is a stop-motion animated movie that once again features Wes Anderson as writer, director, and producer. It's based on the 1970 book of the same name by author Roald Dahl. This was the 8th adaptation of a Dahl book and the second to use stop-motion animation following James and the Giant Peach in 1996. Because the movie wasn't a box office success, it would be another 7 years before we saw the next Dahl adaptation in Steven Spielberg's The BFG in 2016. Fantastic Mr. Fox was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Animated Feature. It was up against another stop-motion picture in Coraline, however both films ended up losing to the Pixar movie Up. Fantastic Mr. Fox follows the title character, voiced by George Clooney, who's an overly protective father as well as an overly confident fox. He tries to settle into being a family man, but in his drive to make a better life for his family, he decides to go back to his thieving ways in spite of his wife's wishes. Meanwhile, his son Ash, voiced by Jason Schwartzman, struggles to win his father's approval that's made all the more difficult when his talented cousin Christopherson, voiced by Eric Chase Anderson, comes to live with them. The vocal talent of the movie also includes Wes Anderson's staples like Owen Wilson, Willem Dafoe, Wallace Wolodarski, and Bill Murray, as well as Meryl Streep, who voices Mrs. Fox. You know, you don't always see a ton of them, certainly not every year, but it's always really cool to see a well-done stop-motion animated feature because so much has to go into the production. And, you know, considering the type of filmmaker that Wes Anderson is and how much he likes to be involved in every detail, a medium like stop-motion animation seems perfect for him. In the special features for the film, Anderson mentions that at one point during the production, there were 29 units going, when a typical live-action movie might have 1 or 2 at a time. The movie also uses more than 500 puppets, about 100 of which were just for Mr. Fox. Supposedly, Fantastic Mr. Fox was actually the first book that Anderson's mother bought for him when he was a kid, and he pays a lot of respect both to the author as well as the source material. Some points of dialogue in the movie were pulled straight from the text, and the world of the film was based in part on the village of Great Missenden, where Roald Dahl both lived and worked. In fact, the study where Mr. Fox comes up with his master plan is similar to a studio that Dahl had. Part of his writing process was to record himself as Mr. Fox does in the film.
Second, listen, I'm not going to justify this to you. Just pay attention and stop interrupting me. I'm taping this.
That care and attention to detail translates well to the performances, both in the acting and in the animation. In order to get the physicality for the characters in a scene, Anderson would act out chunks of dialogue from the script and record himself doing so for the animators. And as animation director Mark Gustafson notes, a lot of time and attention is put into having the puppets exaggerate their emotions in order to make it come through the fur. Beyond having a team of animators who are well versed in stop-motion projects like Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit and Corpse Bride, Wes Anderson also drew inspiration from the animation of yesteryear in order to create certain elements for his characters. Anderson points to the 1933 version of King Kong as inspiration and says he admires how the original Kong was animated. In Fantastic Mr. Fox, he does a few things to make the stop-motion animation a focal point. For one, the movie is shot at a rate of 12 frames per second instead of the standard 24. Anderson also encouraged the animators to allow the fur to ripple instead of trying to keep it steady, a process known as boiling. And as impressive as the animation is, a key component to making these characters really come alive is also the vocal work behind them. The movie was George Clooney's first and so far only animated feature. He brings an authority to the character and a cockiness that feels both engaging and endearing. This was also the first time Meryl Streep and George Clooney have acted alongside one another. They have a nice chemistry and it feels like they challenge one another in their roles. One of the most distinct voices, of course, is that of Bill Murray. He doesn't do much to disguise it, but the character of the Badger allows Murray to play a dry humor that lands well against Clooney's Mr. Fox. And while all these elements are certainly wonderful, one of the key highlights of the movie is the strength of the original story and what Wes Anderson brings to it. The story from the book is sandwiched between pieces that were created by Anderson for the film and help to not only flesh out certain characters and storylines, but also introduce new animals. The movie goes against type a bit for Anderson in that this was his first family film and the only one to receive a PG rating by the MPAA. But Anderson approaches much of the process like a live-action movie. It has a quick pace that sometimes slows to allow a scene to breathe, but always keeps a quirky and sometimes frantic energy about it. It's full of Andersonisms like overly complicated plans.
Basically, there's 3 grabbers, 3 taggers, 5 twig runners, and the player at whack-bat. The center tagger lights a pine cone, chucks it over the basket, and the whack-batter tries to hit the cedar stick off the cross rock. Then the twig runners dash back and forth until the pine cone burns out and the umpire calls hot box. Finally, at the end, you count up however many score downs it adds up to and divide that by 9.
Got it.
Top-down shots, and characters spiking the camera, which is exactly what you'd expect from a Wes Anderson movie. In all, it's definitely not a huge mass appeal movie, but if you're willing to venture into a unique animation style and method of storytelling, this is one I think you'll enjoy watching. I give Fantastic Mr. Fox an 8.75 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on Fantastic Mr. Fox. When you've had a chance to see the movie, I want to hear what you thought about it and what's your favorite Wes Anderson film if you happen to have one. Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And with that, we are done with this episode of Old, New, and Now Playing. Hey, while you're here, go ahead and click that like button if you enjoyed this review and become a subscriber if you're not already so you can enjoy all of the goodness that's coming from this channel in the very near future. And while you're at it, go ahead and hop over to the Facebook page, become a member of that group over there, and that way we can talk even more about films in a different format. And with that, I thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you next time.